right, welcome to eMigos podcast. We're doing our second podcast that we've ever done. It also happens to be our first mobile podcast. We're coming back directly from the Man of Steel Walmart premiere event, 7 p.m. the night before release. Gotta say that, wow, it was awesome. What do y'all think?
Awesome. I'm gonna double that.
Awesome.
Double awesome. What about you, Ganndyman?
I'll lead with a wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll end with wow, lead with wow, whatever. That's all you need to know is wow.
Well, if this gives any indication to the reaction of how we felt after the movie, we left the movie about 9:30 and immediately we're contemplating sticking around for a midnight show, which we're not because we're doing the podcast and frankly we just want to get some sleep. We know we're going to come back and watch it anyways, but it's that good. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is that good. You will see things in this movie that I don't think you've ever seen in a movie before. You definitely see things you've never seen in a Superman movie before. And I would definitely, not to say that there was a whole lot of competition amongst the series, if you can count it all as one series, I would definitely say this is the Superman movie of Superman movies. Hopefully until they top it again with a sequel, which I hope that they are going to be able to do. But, talking about the movie, we had a few things that we wanted to talk about. First thing first, the movie directly starts off in Krypton.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, we got to do all that. Okay. Preface everything. Go watch the movie and then listen to this. Go watch it. What are you doing? Why haven't you already seen it? Go watch it.
Go watch it at midnight.
Go watch it at midnight. You have time. They have tickets. Go see it. But with that said, there's going to be heavy spoilers in this podcast. So, with that said, let's get started. Krypton. I kind of felt that it was about as fully realized of a sci-fi world as you could get in the movie. It surprised me with some of the things and little details that they put in it. What did y'all think about it?
Well, it's an advanced civilization, so you see that. You see that they're advanced. You see that they have the capabilities to, send somebody out to the far reaches of the galaxy.
I thought it was awesome with the all the things they were able to do with the sci-fi depictions of the movie. It just seemed to have more like me and BoomStick talked about before, how it seemed to be more sci-fi feel than it did comic book movie.
Yes.
But that didn't. I don't feel like that took away from
I'll
it.
third that.
But you really did feel like you were in an advanced civilization instead of just some movie props thrown in just to make it seem realistic.
CGI.
But and I thought it was awesome how they included their expansion and all these how they ran out of resources, so they had to kind of recall back. I was a little taken aback how they kind of didn't for an advanced civilization they didn't seem to have a really firm grasp on like resource allocation.
Yeah.
So I mean, using the core of your planet to fuel your planet, I wasn't entirely bought into that.
Well, but it's pretty easy to see what the illusions were for. It was basically, if you look at how there was an environmental message to it, very subtle, but it was there, of the exploitation of the planet and how it will lead to its destruction. The parallel there is already with Earth the way that it is now and the direction that we're headed, and which is kind of our reliance upon energies as they are now. We destroy our environment, maybe not in the same way that they did, but they were trying to make that connection. I feel it was there, but with the animal life, I was just struck by it. Was just vibrant. It was crazy. Stuff on Krypton was stuff you would never see here on Earth. The technology that they had, basically the metals and the elements that they had that composed most of their machinery and things. It was just basically things in sci-fi done in a way that I'd not seen before. So regardless of my anticipation as a Superman movie, as a sci-fi fan, I left satisfied with everything that I saw. And what did y'all think about the genetic factor? This whole nature versus nurture really is what the whole movie the premise is about. But what did y'all think about they did tinker with the origins of Superman to a degree, and add in this genetic factor. How did y'all think that may have changed things for you?
So you're talking about like them genetically engineering humans? Beings.
Kryptonians. Everybody was, just to give, if you've seen it, you'll know. But the Kryptonians for centuries have been bred genetically, basically in laboratories. And Kal-El, son of Jor-El and Kara, they are, or Lara, I mean, he is the first naturally born child in centuries. And of course, there's other things that happen with that. There's the codex, is what they call it, which is basically the genetic code, I would take it, of the Kryptonian race that's imbued within Kal-El before he leaves. It was a whole other element added that really put a lot of the reasoning behind why someone like Zod would follow Kal-El to Earth. And of course, just my opinion, I thought that it really added something to it. And I know we have, with our being our second podcast, as a huge comic book movie fan, I'm usually one for stick to the comics. But in this case, I thought the additions, as well as others, this was a welcome addition. It kind of contemporized things and gave us some food for thought, not just to make an entertaining movie, but some things to think about with issues that we have today. What do y'all think?
Well, as a person that doesn't necessarily read comic books or follow, the Superman story, I still found it very entertaining, very catching. I know the whole, Superman, how he came to Earth, and I know the origin, where he came from, but not knowing, everything about it, I thought it was a great movie regardless. It satisfied me.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the resource allocation thing, where one of the first things you got to do is start limiting your population. I mean, that'd be the way to do it. And it's kind of, they didn't go really into how it was selected and who gets the next baby and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, it was definitely believable about why they had to do what they had to do.
Well, that they didn't explain about that, like who gets the next child. So we don't know if they're even just, if they're military, if they're raised by, like in a barracks, from birth, they're ingrained with that. They didn't go into all those things.
I don't know if they had the time. They didn't want to build too. I take it as probably that they didn't want to build it too heavily into Krypton. I mean, honestly, I felt blown away by you open the movie up and it's on Krypton. And you're in the midst of it, and
not many credits before you get there.
No, I mean, the movie starts right there.
Well, that, and I mean, you can see why they wouldn't want to build too much into what the origins of Krypton and all this stuff, because I mean, in the movie, it's on its way out.
Well, and it's on its way out, and I know we'll probably get into this later, but there are other mysteries of Krypton that potentially could be brought out in interesting ways. One villain probably the villain that most comic book fans have been looking forward to in a potential Superman sequel is Brainiac. I mean, the suppository of Kryptonian knowledge, at least in some incarnations, and he is basically the central computer on which all of Krypton was built and run, and he wants to collect more and more knowledge, and the things that we don't know about Krypton, even though it's gone, they can be brought out in sequels to a character like him. So I know there's probably a whole lot of other things that we could see, that we would want to see, that we may still have the potential to see in a sequel. But kind of moving forward, Jor-El, wow. This wasn't some disembodied head like in the 78 original. Marlon Brando, as he played it. Russell Crowe, was in a good portion of the movie. And as far as his the reasoning behind him being in that, what did y'all think about that? With the I don't know if you'd call him a hologram or what you'd call him, but dude's in probably a good 30-40 minutes of the movie.
I mean, you'd have to have a strong, father head. I mean, a father figure in there to, so he can find out his origins. I mean, not necessarily explain everything about the planet and, how he came to be, but at least give him the sense of, of who he was, and give him enough information so he can make the choice of who he wants to be himself. So, I mean, I thought it was a good addition to, and it felt just really natural that he would just kind of stumble upon it and be able to make his own decision from there.
Yeah, and it wasn't some like instructional video that just showed him. And to a degree, I guess they had that with later on in the movie, whenever he starts learning of the origins. Well, he starts learning about Krypton when Superman starts to learn of Krypton. They kind of show a montage through that. I don't even know what you would call it, but that it's kind of like a metal element or something that moves around and it paints pictures and whatnot. But which I thought was a nice touch. But it wasn't just some video that he saw that all of a sudden gives him everything that he needs to know. It's like his dad is there with him, and I thought that was something.
I think having his dad there gave him clarity.
Yeah.
Maybe even kind of unlocked that knowledge he already had inside of him.
Well, and he continually, one of the themes in the movie is he's alone.
Then he's not alone.
At least for a minute there, at least for a part of his life, he didn't feel quite so alone. But as far as Russell Crowe, his performance, I thought it was great. Of course,
amazing.
He's going to bring a physicality to it. Just which of course with Jor-El, we're so used to. I know just looking at different. Jor-El hardly lasts at all
in anything
with Superman, because just the nature of who the character is, he dies with the planet. But making him more of a central character, at least for this film, I thought really benefited it a lot.
I mean, I thought it gave him a real nice tie to his home planet. It's not just, it's some planet that everybody keeps talking about that I'm from and that I should have feelings for. But if you give him, not only just a link to his home planet, but also, it's a family link.
His own father, yes.
His own father is the link, so it creates even more stronger link to it, and give him actually feelings of, what should he do, and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, watching that part, even where he discovers where he came from, when he sees the knowledge, he's there with Jor-El. It kind of made me think, because I like Smallville, a little bit linked to that. I mean, which that was a big part of the movie as well.
Well, yeah.
But we'll get to that.
Well, and since we've pretty much talked as much as we can about Jor-El, what about Jonathan? I mean, okay, to me it was just crazy that whichever way you go, his dad is Robin Hood. Okay, you got Russell Crowe and you got Kevin Costner. I mean, Robin Hood. And then I think in the comic books, it's like him and Green Arrow are such good buds. It's like, okay, well, of course it is. Your dads are Robin Hood.
Yeah, look at that, shooting a bow and arrow.
Yeah, but Kevin Costner, man, I mean, could you get anybody more
embody?
Yeah,
Jonathan
that
Kent.
essence. Yes, I mean, I don't think that you could. And I mean, again, spoiler. He's not in the movie maybe as much as I would have wanted him to be, but his and the way they set the movie up for sequels, they can always bring him back for flashbacks. Always,
flashbacks.
Yeah. And the movie relied heavily upon that. I don't know if we'll be able to talk about that later, which I thought was nice, but Kevin Costner, yeah, he was great. What do you think, Juan?
I have to agree there. They brought a lot of strong actors to the roles, and I think that's something that Superman as a franchise just desperately needs. When as it embarks in its remake into the cinema world, and I mean, he seems just really down to earth. Like, he was a lot more grounded than I thought he would be. You see the dad in other kind of adaptations where he's just kind of freaked out about what his son is, and not just you don't feel like he's completely trusting of who he is as his alternate self. But in this one, I thought he did a real good job of actually making Clark feel like he was part of the family, like he belonged. That yes, he may have special powers, and as he refers to it in the movie, his other side, it's that he's still a part of the family, and he can still be just as human as he wants to be. But at the same time, you have to instill to him, this isn't normal, and that whether or not he, decided to be, good or bad, that he was going to be important into, Earth's history. So, I mean, it just seems like he just did a real good job as a father figure for him.
Yeah, and I don't know. One thing they didn't quite show is he kind of looked like maybe a person that was looking for that person in the stars to come,
looking for a savior.
Yeah, well, and and of course it gets dropped in his lap. But he kind of had the attitude, we're not, you show us that we're not alone in the universe. There's a lot of power in that, and of course I think that could be another thing that's potentially explored in a sequel, which wasn't so much here. But the idea of how does he change? How does the existence of a Superman change our world, change our views of God, our views of ourselves, our views of what is our role and all those things. Potential stuff for sequels, of course.
But even then, I think it was really good that he, I mean, not only was like a strong father figure, but he wasn't pushy. He wasn't like, we gotta teach him to do the right thing and do all this. It's like,
when it's time, it's time.
when it's time, it's.
And you'll know when the right
Well,
time.
I mean,
is.
obviously, you have to be instilled with, good morality and all that stuff. But he wasn't pushy about it, and told him, you could be good and you can also be bad just as easy. But you gotta, know what kind of, person you're going to
What
be.
man you want to be is what he said. Yeah. I think that there's going to be a lot of people that will probably have some problems with, a father figure that tells him to hone it in, and if need be, let somebody die. But he was looking out for his son. He was looking out for
his safety.
He was looking out for his safety. I mean, he loved him, and
he knew that the world would destroy him if he revealed himself too soon.
Yeah,
that they would hate him.
Absolutely. Zod. What did we think about Zod? Michael Shannon. Okay, I've been a big fan of Michael Shannon for some time. The dude can play crazy like nobody's business.
Well, tell us some roles he's been in before.
Well, I mean, come on. Boardwalk Empire. I know he did a movie called Bug. I saw parts of it. It was just nuts. He did a movie, what was it? Take Shelter, which was kind of an indie movie from, I believe, last year, year before. The dude's great. He's not gotten a whole lot of mainstream roles. A lot of people would probably be like, who is this guy?
I was wondering who he was, actually.
You were wondering who he was? I thought you'd seen him and stuff. But
no, I haven't watched
anything? Oh, man. The dude can blow up like nobody else. And
he can play crazy.
He can play crazy, man.
See, but I kind of have to a little disagree. I mean, not about his
acting.
his acting wise. I just think as a character, he wasn't trying to go for as much crazy as just.
Well, Zod wasn't. Yeah. Zod as a character, I agree. Zod wasn't crazy. Zod was being who he was made to be. He was a protector of his race. He was bred to be a military leader, to be a leader, to look out for the safety of his people, and he's going to do that at all costs because that's all he has. But
I mean, it's just for one race to flourish. You have to. Exterminate another one.
It's to crush some heads.
It's not
apparently.
It's not so much that he just went around and shot everybody with lasers and tried to kill all the people individually. He went straight for changing the atmosphere, trying to make it into a new Krypton, with the knowledge of this is going to kill everybody because it's not this is not going to be an adaptation that humans can endure.
Yeah, it's a militaristic approach, but whatever steps he took, he said no matter how cruel, he was always doing it for his planet, for his people. There's a nobility to that. It makes him an interesting villain because really, in his own eyes and in his followers' eyes, Feora and the rest of them that were there with him, he wasn't a villain. He is actually an inspiring leader.
He's a savior of a race.
Yeah, and if you really looked at the movie through his perspective, yes, an entire planet is going to die, but the hopes of his race would continue. Interesting. To me, it was more interesting than Superman 2, where you've got some guys they break out of intergalactic prison and just wreak some havoc. This was actually for a purpose, and I thought they did really well with it.
Yeah, I mean, because you got to think about it. I mean, the kind of a pinnacle you see in a lot of villains is. It's just they got to have a cause. There's usually a reason they're doing what they're doing, and it's usually not something that is not noble. It's just not
for their own.
Yeah, and you can't really get behind. Well, not to say that we get behind Zod, but that you can't really understand most villains, like their motivations, if they're not done well. I thought this was a villain done well.
Yeah, I mean, he's completely different character than say the Joker from the Batman franchise.
He did it to wreak havoc.
Yeah. As Joker's an agent of chaos, Zod is coming in. He is trying to rebuild order for his own world. It was going to, there's going to be some cracked eggs to make that omelet, but he's going to do what he has to do it.
That was a good line. That was
What's
good.
Oh.
You got to crack some eggs and make it. That was good. That was good.
Yeah, TM.
Yeah.
But Henry Cavill, The dude is Superman. Okay, his voice is Superman.
I want to raise
his
this.
look is super. Go ahead.
I want to raise this. Compared to Christopher Reeve.
Why do you have to do that? Why do you got to put me on the spot, man?
Compared to Christopher Reeve.
Christopher Reeve could not have pulled off what they were trying to do with this movie. Not to say that he couldn't, but he was a completely different type of Superman.
Well,
There's
they
a
didn't
levity
have the
there.
technology.
Well, and I think this is something that we need to talk about. As far as my opinion, Cavill was great. Cavill looked it, sounded it, acted it. He was great. But I know that some critics have already said, well, this movie doesn't have enough jokes. It's too self-serious in these things.
It's supposed to be serious.
Well, and honestly, if you look at this movie, it's showing. I mean, to get to the end of it, I mean, he isn't Clark Kent as we know Clark Kent yet in this movie. He's still trying to figure out if he wants to be a part of this world. And so, no, there isn't a lot of levity. There's not a lot of humor. There is some. I'm not saying there's none. But that was one thing about the Christopher Reeve part. He played both parts so well, but that served the interest of that movie. In this movie, he's playing a singular character. He's playing who Clark really is, and I've always thought that Clark Kent with the glasses on, that's just a disguise. You know, yeah, he slumps his shoulders in, he acts a little bit geekier, he tries to fit in.
He acts a lot clumsy, more clumsy.
Yeah, that's just an attempt to fit in with the rest of the world. Superman is who he really is. And that's what this movie is about, is showing that character and forming him into being the hero that he was always meant to be.
Yeah, because I mean, you have Christopher Reeves is the Stars and Stripes, like
savior,
the good guy. Yeah. You know, I always could like cookie cutter, like hero. But you also have this Superman who's what it was, giving us the feeling of like this is an alien from outer space, but not as we know it. It's not a little green man and a little disc spaceship. It's a guy that has way more powers than we could have ever thought somebody could have, and it's going to be a little darker when you have somebody that grows up in a world they don't know, they think they're a part of, but then he has all this added abilities.
I don't know if y'all have seen that movie. I've never seen the original. I've seen the remake. I wasn't too impressed with it. But something I just thought of that this movie really related to. This was full on sci-fi, like we said. We really haven't talked about that, but it's full on sci-fi. And it reminded me, at least like I said, it's an inferior movie, the remake was, and I never saw the original because I can't speak too much about it. But The Day the Earth Stood Still, did you ever see that?
The one
with Keanu Reeves?
Yes, I've
seen it. Kind of gave me the impression it's a visitor. The world doesn't know how to take him. It was that type of character. That's who Clark was in this. And really, what would we be able to do? I mean, like there's one scene where he walks in. They take him into custody. He willingly lets the military put the handcuffs on him. Yeah. Which of course I think it's on the poster. Everybody's seeing it. It's a powerful image in the trailer. It's a powerful image. Because it is. It's showing he is lowering himself to be a part of mankind, and to go willingly, and that was kind of the point of that. But what would we do if a being of such power just came to this world? Those are the kind of questions that make this movie more interesting than just there's crazy fights in this movie. I mean, explosions like you wouldn't believe. I mean, to me, it blew Avengers as far as destruction out of the water. Not to say that there has to be a comparison between the two, but the Avengers, I guess if you was to have an insurance collector to run out and look at the damage done by those movies, like there would be no comparison.
What was the one they said the Avengers? How much money was it?
It was billions, but I don't even want to think about how much.
I think it would be like trillions of dollars.
It was like
you've got international damage in this movie.
Pretty much. I mean,
not just New York City.
They fought on multiple continents.
I mean, you've got global. On both sides of the planet
outer
going
space,
on. Yeah.
Everywhere. So.
Crazy damage. But what were we saying?
I just got you off topic completely today with the Christopher Reeve thing.
Well, again, going back to the Day the Earth Stood Still. What would we do with a being like that, of that power? That's really what the central thrust of this movie was.
If movies are any indicator, then I'm scared for our lives.
I mean,
all these
there'd be
tanks
two
and guns lined
movements,
up.
okay?
Yeah.
A physical movement and a bowel movement.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what would happen.
Yeah.
And
It just doesn't seem to be anything in any movie that we have any kind of influence over any beings from extraterrestrials.
You got to think. All these movies are being made in Hollywood. The government's thought about this.
Well,
what if?
Well, and okay, and I hate to get into this Marvel DC thing, but think about it. If you threw the Avengers at just Superman, he'd hand it to all of them, as he's presented in this movie. They wouldn't have a chance. Honestly, he would take Hulk and just throw him up into space. There's no comparison. And as a kid, I always thought, well, Hulk will always beat Superman. There ain't no way.
No.
There is no way.
No.
I suppose if you could get like Superman pinned down for a second and just kind of like lay Thor's hammer on him,
yeah,
like maybe done there.
Lay the hammer on him. Sprinkle some kryptonite around, which they didn't show in this movie at all. But
you have Thor though. Thor, as we know from the comics, if they keep consistent with comics,
can't move it.
Yeah, well, not just that, but you also Superman's susceptible to magic.
That's true. That's true.
It's magic, and Thor's a very magical being, but. You know,
it's just quite magical.
Or we just add another Avenger. Mr. or I should say, Doctor Strange.
Phase 3, maybe.
Right, maybe. And
are we going to get into this? I mean, are we going to keep talking about Man of Steel?
Oh, well, okay.
Well, it's a conversation.
It's a conversation. It's fun. Now, let's see here. Next topic. What do you think we should talk about next?
Well, going a little bit back to Zod. Should Zod have been the first villain that we see in the remake? Was he?
He's the biggest villain
yes.
he had.
Or a lot of people would argue it's like should his Superman's? I would say arguably Superman's biggest villain is Luthor.
Luthor.
Luthor's reactionary though. He'll be in a sequel. He'll be in the next one. I guarantee you. But he's reactionary. He is mankind's response, much more than the military or anything like that. It's that how do we control? How do we better that?
Well, you gotta look at Marvel's approach to the whole like the villain things. You got Marvel who gives you kind of hint to who they're going to be going with. Like
there were little hints in it. Did you see it? Now that we're on that topic, there was LexCorp vans. There was LexCorp trucks, like fuel trucks. There was LexCorp buildings. They were even supposed to be the Wayne Enterprises and the satellite. I didn't catch it.
I didn't even notice LexCorp.
You didn't see LexCorp?
I didn't see LexCorp.
I was too focused on everything.
There was signs. It was painted on the side of tanker trucks and stuff. So LexCorp exists.
Well, at least in I should say, not
already
all DC movies weren't the same way, but in Batman, you had Batman Begins, very end of it, you have Batman on the roof with Gordon, and then gives him the calling card, calls himself the Joker, and
Well, just like on the Avengers at the end of that.
Thanos.
They showed that.
But that was a bonus scene, but still, yeah.
I think honestly, this movie was a gamble. This movie is a gamble. And while I think it's going to be successful, they've already supposed to be fast-tracking a sequel. We have no guarantees.
Well, I think this movie is already made.
It's made a lot of money.
Just by pre-sales from Walmart. I think $110 million.
$110 million? Where did you get that figure? Their projections for the weekend are like $110, $130 million. We'll see when it winds up as.
I thought I saw that on some website, but I could be wrong. That might just be projections.
But they made this movie not knowing that this movie is, honestly, to many people, probably one of the most anticipated movies of all time, because what this means is if it's a success, we're going to get DC to the level that we've already gotten Marvel. We're going to get Justice League movie. We're going to get Flash. We're going to get Wonder Woman. We're going to get Aquaman. We're going to get everybody. Green Lantern came out. Some loved it. Some hated it.
You didn't mention Green Arrow.
Who knows? Green Arrow.
He's going to be in there.
Well,
not in a Justice League
movie.
Not first off.
Well, should we rush into a Justice League movie? I mean, do all the members of the Justice League deserve their own feature film?
That's a whole other podcast in itself.
That's true.
But with the structure of this movie, if you'll notice, okay, they introduce Superman as a baby. They would flash forward to his adult life, and then they tell his past through flashbacks. They show his character through flashbacks, and then at the end of the movie, we finally get the character of Clark Kent. He's always been raised as Clark, but he was always Kal-El. We get him putting on the character of Clark Kent. He becomes Superman as the full-on character as we know it at the end of the movie. And what that showed me was that this movie was presenting something that in itself, if they never made another one, you could be satisfied with it. They're not leading on to another sequel or anything like that.
I might
know.
be satisfied, but I wouldn't be happy about it.
Well, we want a sequel. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
consensus will be sequel. Bring it here now.
But I'd be satisfied with the ending. As the movie as a whole, it's satisfying.
It is satisfying. It's Zack Snyder, in my opinion, his best movie yet. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who did Watchmen, did 300. He's did some quality stuff.
Well, if we want to, we don't want to talk about
That's-
Watchmen because, but Man of Steel.
Man of Steel, awesome. Now,
So who do we think about? If we could just project who they might be bringing in, who would be if they make a sequel? Who would be the next projected villain? Do you think?
Luther will be in there, but realistically, Luther is the mind behind plots. He's not ever been the brawn, even with the suits on. Superman would, obviously, after what we saw tonight, he'd tear him up. I think Brainiac is an incredible choice if they were to go with Brainiac, because again, it slips back into the Kryptonian. We're not distancing ourselves from Krypton. We can bring in more about its heritage, or we can bring in more about its history, some of the reasons why. I mean, an interesting thing for today, the expanse of knowledge and technology led to Brainiac for the Kryptonian people. And then in many incarnations in the comics and in animation and different sources, Brainiac was one of the reasons why the whole planet blew up in the first place.
So
he led to it
So-
because of their increase in technology and those things.
So maybe if we could have got like a little bottle of the city of Kandor in there, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a little sneak peek or something like that. Maybe we could have got a better affirmation, but
Well,
that would
yeah.
have been a nice touch. I
Yeah,
think.
it's going to be interesting to see if, in this semi-realistic incarnation of Superman, how they would handle something like Kandor and how they would do that. But Brainiac, as far as an allusion to our increasing reliance on technology as a society, you can throw some pretty intellectual stuff, I think, into a big-budget blockbuster movie sequel like a Man of Steel 2 and introduce a great villain. That would be my choice, Brainiac. Do y'all know of any others that y'all would think of? Luther's got to be in there somewhere. You can't avoid him. People are like, I don't want to see Luther. We've seen him in every Superman movie in some way. But Luther is the other side of the coin. He is Superman's Joker. Not as interesting as the Joker. Hardly anybody's as interesting as the Joker. But he is his villain.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I got the food. I think I know what I would like to see. I mean, I wouldn't put it very high on the priority list, especially with the villain choices of this one. But maybe throw a little Shazam in there. Just someone else that, and you can see it from this movie. You got people who have, Superman's grown up his whole life with nobody could touch him. He's developed a sense of invulnerability till he meets his his fellow race who come down and they can match him punch for punch. So I would like to see Shazam somewhere in there.
But as a villain? Well, I mean, if you bring in Shazam, you got to bring in Black Adam, and then you almost kind of have what we saw tonight, where you've got Superman and Zod. You've got two sides of the same coin. I mean, it could be interesting.
But like I said, I wouldn't put it high on the priority list. Just because of the way this movie was, it would be kind of too much of a rehash, I think.
Yeah.
I think realistically, as a sequel, they're going to look at Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor will have in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's, right now they're in production on Amazing Spider-Man 2. And they've already cast Norman Osborn. They kind of hinted at him in the movie. It may even be that kind of thing where he's a guy working in the shadows, but Luthor will come up. The name will come up in a sequel. Has to, because again, he's his villain. It's just like The Dark Knight. We had Batman Begins. There's a little mention. There's little nods to him, just like in this movie, LexCorp. In the sequel, he'll be there. He'd have to be.
Well, I also think maybe not just strictly Superman villains. How would you think they would go with maybe like a crossover? Maybe have a Scarecrow pop up in town and doing some stuff, and Superman shows
Psychological.
up and, he wouldn't be a major threat to Superman, but maybe get a little collaboration, which you haven't seen in feature films that weren't made to be collaborations.
I don't think realistically in Man of Steel 2 or whatever they call it, they would bring in something like that.
Well, and talking about messing with his mind, there is another character that can really mess with him, because we've already brought up that Superman can't handle magic. I mean, Mr. Mxyzptlk is this entity that's all about magic, all about bringing down Superman, and he's this little bitty not even formidable being, but he can take down Superman.
And the way you beat him is make him say his
Say
name backwards.
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
it's crazy, but I don't. That's one thing about Superman. I mean, arguably you could say, well, his villains aren't as good as some of the other ones. A lot of his villains, like Metallo. I mean, like say you want somebody for a sequel, you could bring in Metallo, but honestly, he's just kind of like a cyborg man powered by kryptonite, which Zack Snyder said he's not a fan of. There was not an ounce of kryptonite in this movie. Now, there was Kryptonian atmospheres and those things that were brought up.
I think there was a Kryptonian dagger. That's the only thing I could see that might have
Didn't touch him though.
No, but there was kryptonite.
I kind of thought that's what the way they were going to go when Superman first meets Zod up on the ship. He brings him up with
You
Lois.
thought that was kryptonite? Yeah.
I thought he's like, hey,
it's a piece of our planet.
Yeah, I feel woozy, but at the same time, I think there's other Kryptonians in the room.
Well,
is it just Superman that's susceptible to?
Well, and think about it. The way they did this movie, how is kryptonite going to get on Earth? I mean, it's isolated. It's gone. Like, I don't see many Kryptonian threats coming other than Brainiac, because Brainiac was already left, banished, and gone. Can come to Earth.
Besides magic, which you just can't kind of pull out of thin air. I mean, so to speak. I mean, with going with the sci-fi technology-based theme, but Kryptonite's really kind of only Lex Luthor and all the other kind of villains. That's their only kind of thing they can wave in front of his face to keep him at bay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some kind of threat of Kryptonian rays, Kryptonian this, Kryptonian pointed spears or whatever. Anything you can fashion from kryptonite, is the only way they kind of can keep him back. But I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see the direction that they go. We don't know anything at this point. It's going to be interesting to see how much money this thing makes. I think. Here's my take on it. It should be huge. Hopefully, it is huge.
Movie of the summer.
It should be movie of the summer. There's a lot of shoulds in my view on it, because I really think that you got to go see it.
Something I noticed. I don't want to run over you, but something I noticed. There's toward the end of the movie. There's this scene, and the whole theater, there's silence. Not a baby crying. Nobody drinking out of a drink.
Powerful stuff. Yeah.
Just silence, and people just watching the movie. And I think that's
you rarely get that.
Yes, and I think that's going to be the key to its success if that can happen.
I think this is a movie that aims to evoke emotion. I think it's successful. It's not just rock'em sock'em robots. It's got a lot of explosions. It's got a lot of action. In fact, I would venture to say it's probably got as much or more action than most any movie I've probably ever seen. But it's still got heart. It's still got.
It's got
everything.
the love interest with Lois, but they also mention Lana.
We didn't even talk about Lois.
Right.
No.
Amy Adams. What do you think?
Well, the funny thing was, right at the first movie, in the bus, you see Lana.
Yeah.
And then you see, they don't even talk about her, but she was his first love interest.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, she saw what he did just as much as Pete did. They had Pete. They kind of he was in the background a little bit of a different take on Pete Ross, but I thought it was good. But Lana is somebody who, yes, again, sequels could come up.
Well,
Definitely.
She comes back into his life somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
I loved how romantic interest didn't get in the way, like it does in so many movies.
Yes,
nowadays.
It wasn't forced. It was. And that's been a criticism of the movie. A lot of critics have said, well, there was no relationship, and it felt so half-baked and all these things. I'm thinking, finally, we get a superhero movie where it doesn't get in the way.
Right, Superman and Lois kiss, that's it. That is as close as it got, and I think it would have taken away from the main focus.
So what do you think about, how do you think this relates to, another movie with, a lone character with a love interest, like Thor, the movie?
How does it relate to it?
They're talking about, that the love interest doesn't get in the way.
I didn't think it got away with Thor either. It was just it showed the relationship Thor had with
the
her.
Humanity he had.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at Superman. Look back a few years ago, Superman Returns. Yeah, that movie. Well, there was a lot of problems with that movie, but it won't delve into that. But there was, it was just too reliant on that Lois and Clark relationship stuff, and some people eat that stuff up. But I finally want to see a Superman movie where it's like a comic book.
He can be by himself.
And that was really the point of this movie. He's by himself. He's alone.
I mean, he can survive without some woman. The movie can survive without a woman. I hope that's what happens with this movie.
Yeah, and my one concern with it is that hopefully it will connect. Most movies, if they're going to be a big success, they got to connect on both sides of the aisle. You need men and women. I mean, from what I take it, there were lots of women that went. They were impressed with it.
What I saw,
yeah, and it doesn't. I guess it can kind of finally show that we don't need a ton of romance and stuff. Let's just have a good movie, good story, and
I think a part of it is that most women will be like, "Oh, he's hot. We got to go watch him."
You said it, not me. No,
I mean seriously, women will go watch it just mainly because there's a good-looking guy.
Well, and we'll see how it turns. We'll see how it turns out.
I mean, not trying to take away from anything.
Do you have something to tell us?
Ganndyman does have something to tell you. That most movies, if you want to draw women, you got to have a hot guy to come, save the day, so they'll go watch the movie as well.
Yeah.
I mean, but this movie should draw them not just because of that.
Yeah. Thought one thing, Amy Adams, good take on Lois Lane. And it'd be interesting to see how they develop her later.
I think Amy Adams is great about anything.
Well, yeah.
I mean, any movie.
Very good. Any other thoughts you think before we close out?
Last thing I can think of to talk about. Was there enough backstory as Clark for some of the viewers who aren't as familiar with Superman? Was there enough backstory there to kind of keep you going? Was there kind of too much that kind of took away from Superman? Or
I think we got to get somebody that, okay, Superman means a lot to me. I know a lot about it. I can fill in the gaps. You have to talk to somebody that, doesn't have a lot of knowledge of it. But I thought so it's hard to distance myself from it, but I thought the story was great moving forward in itself.
I think even if you don't know a lot about Superman, don't know a lot about the backstory, you know enough that you're going to, watch the movie.
Yeah.
But then you'll enjoy it whether you know a lot about it or not.
Well, he's a cultural icon. I mean, everybody knows the glasses, they know the cape, they know those things.
They know the colors,
Yeah.
Red and blue.
Well, in Truth, Justice, the American Way. I mean, he is the American superhero. Captain America is one thing, but I mean, Superman is the king of superheroes. Let's just say it, because he is. He's the granddaddy, man. He's the first of the biggies, and so he's. Everybody knows it to a degree. I mean, I looked across the audience. I saw people of all ages, of all races. I've seen men and women. I've seen kids. I've seen adults. I mean, I saw everybody there. And so, for whatever reason that they went and saw it tonight, maybe it was they on a whim, they bought tickets at Walmart at this event. Who knows why they were there? But Superman speaks to all of us in some way, whether we were adopted. Whether we don't know of both of our parents and it speaks to us in that way, maybe we're just confused and we don't know our direction in life and we're just looking for some way. He speaks to us in those ways.
Maybe we have two dads.
Maybe we have two dads. Maybe we have two dads.
Two moms, whatever.
Well, I mean, the crazy world now we're in, but you got all this going on, all these different directions you can take it. People can take from it what they will, but he always stands for. He makes one thing about Superman is he will always make the right choice, and
even if it seems like it's the wrong one.
Well, yeah, but I guess there is one more thing before we close. He killed him.
That's true.
He killed Zod.
If you haven't watched the movie, go watch it.
We've already said spoiler. Okay, he kills Zod. Superman doesn't kill. But I love the movie, and it worked. But Superman doesn't kill.
I think in the movie.
He was forced to. In the context of the movie, he had to.
To save human life, he had to kill it.
Well, you have the whole Superman versus Doomsday deal too, and he had to. He died with it, but
yeah,
he also had to kill Doomsday.
Well,
but in the same sense, it wasn't like he didn't have a racial connection to Doomsday or.
But Doomsday was made to kill him.
Yeah, Doomsday was just kill. But Zod was just trying to. As we said before, he had his motives.
Yes, and interesting ones at that. But that's one thing about Superman. Like I said, he's like Batman. Batman's not going to use a gun. Superman's not going to kill somebody. But I think in this movie, maybe it was the modernization of it. I don't know, but it works. And one point that I wanted to bring out too, though, is that earlier in the movie, he loses his dad. He loses Jonathan. Okay, the tornado gets a hold of him, and
right in front of his eyes.
Right in front of his eyes, and his dad's telling him, "Don't come save me. Don't reveal yourself to these people. You know, it's not the time. Let me go." And so he goes with it, and he holds that pain. And I think in the moment that he's holding Zod, he's contemplating. He's got that life or death decision, and it's not to save Zod. It's like in this moment he has to make the right choice. He has to kill Zod, and he takes it. Because,
kill Zod or let humans die.
Yeah, and because Zod is just as powerful at that point as he is.
I think he's, it's almost like, am I going to stay with humanity or am I going to let...
I'm going to make the decision that's going to help my people. And the same
Because
way
they are
Zod
his
was wanting,
people.
because he's now one of us.
The Earth is now under his protection.
He's going to save his people. In just the same way that Zod would have took and crushed the bones of every person on this world to save his own people, Superman had to break some eggs. He had to break some eggs
to make an omelet.
He had to break some eggs and make an omelet. But if you guys, any other things you want to bring up before we close?
Other than the fact that he didn't really have a large palette of powers that Superman's known to have, which back in the day it was just
no cold breath. I know what you mean.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I was thinking of. Was no cold breath. Just freeze Zod right there.
Well,
in his
where
tracks.
were they going to bring that up at?
Well,
when the pod was going down with Lois, he could have. It was on fire. He could have put that out.
Yeah.
But, a tisket, whatever.
Right, and super speed.
Tit for tat,
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. Super speed. I think that you don't want to play all your cards at once. He'll.
That's true.
And Jor-El told him, he says, "You're going to be more powerful. You're more powerful than I thought. Than I could even imagine."
And I did like that they used his powers of flight as an extension of his powers to leap tall buildings.
Yes.
Instead of just magically can fly.
Yes, it's just magically can fly. Because the character, a lot of people may not know, when the character started, it's a bird, it's this guy able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, all that stuff in the original Fleischer cartoons. That character at that point in the comic books, he couldn't fly. He could just jump really, really far.
Well, it kind of, I really like the show of Smallville. Kind of link back to that, him. Through the whole show, he couldn't fly till like the very end
of
the series.
You can walk.
Yeah.
You have to build up.
You have to learn how to, you gotta learn.
You gotta learn. You gotta learn, people.
Walk before
Kids,
you crawl.
stay in school,
rock,
kids. Public service announcement.
If you have special powers, don't reveal them.
Don't do drugs.
Until you're adults.
And if you can be Superman, be Superman. Or Batman, even better.
Right.
Or if you can be an astronaut, be that. Whatever.
Or if you can be Super Batman, that's even better.
It was super bad. Interesting. Well, guys, I think that will help us to conclude on our second podcast. Look forward to another one pretty soon. I'm BoomStick.
I'm Quantum.
And this is Ganndyman.
All right, signing off till next time.